I'm Lexi.
And I'm Kaya.
We gave up our stressful corporate jobs,
Then sold our house.
and downsized all of our belongings to live full-time in this fully converted 1994 Dodge Ram B350. Now the two of us
And our fur baby Muzzy.
are embarking on a 50-state road trip. Ramble along with us on a journey of spiritual growth
And romance.
as we explore the majestic beauty of North America. Who knows, we may even eat some spicy ramen along the way.
Welcome to Rambling Hearts.
I'm Edward October. The sound you hear is the intro to the latest episode of Rambling Hearts, a van life travel vlog on YouTube. This is the start of Octoberpod. The following audio was recovered from a hard drive found in the wreckage of a conversion van registered to Alejandra Corzo. It was part of an episode of Rambling Hearts that was never uploaded to the channel. The accompanying video footage was lost. The voices of Alejandra, Lexi Corzo, and her partner Kaya Swinson are all that remain of this final lost episode.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Where do you want to start?
Well, first of all, welcome to Rambling Hearts. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell to receive notifications whenever new videos are available. I'm Lexi, and this is Kaya. Our dog Muzzy is not with us on this adventure. We left him with Kaya's grandma for the week.
I wouldn't call it an adventure, more like a shit show.
Okay, let's back it up. If you can't tell, we're still a little rattled from the experience we just had. So we decided to leave Muzzy behind and go on a little romantic getaway. We'd spent a lot of time in Atlanta getting the van repaired. Check out our last couple of videos to see more about that. And we just felt like we needed to get away for a bit, and just reconnect.
And Muzzy is an Australian Shepherd. And he's kind of mean when he's around strangers that he thinks are sketchy. So let me just say...
Babe, you're getting ahead of yourself.
Let me just say that I wish we'd had Muzzy with us when all this shit went down.
Oh, shit. Yeah, totally. I wish he was here right now. But we keep getting ahead of ourselves. So we just wanted to spend a whimsical weekend away from Atlanta and chillax for a minute in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and really enjoy each other again for once. The thing that couples do when they're having trouble fighting each other.
You're right. But it was like doomed from the start. And the trip up there was weird with weather and traffic, but I guess that makes sense. Although I would have thought that we'd gone the other way. The way down to Florida, the roads would have been worse, not the ones going up to the Smoky Mountains.
I keep trying to pinpoint what exactly was wrong about the ride up. It had been weird, but not as weird as the ride we just had.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Anyway, at some point, I might like to unpack the oddness I felt about the ride up, but what we just got out of, that was so scary. It was so crazy. I think we seriously just got away with our lives. It's all I can think about, and that, I guess, is the only place that I can start.
Blue Lights, an original story written especially for Octoberpod by Amber Jourdan, inspired by a true encounter, starring YouTube's Chauncey K. Robinson, journalist and host of Production Tales from Hell on the Dead Meat channel, with Karen Rayner, co-host of Chicklit Podcast.
We had found a little known campsite with RV parking. It was high up in the mountains. It was a beautiful spot, but still kind of far from downtown, Gatlinburg and Dollywood and all that shit. And we recorded a lot of video from that part of the trip, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll probably finish editing that together and post it as a separate video after I'm done with this one because, like I said, it's all I can think about.
I guess it wasn't really technically Gatlinburg where we camped. It was some little town in the foothills. So it was kind of spooky the way the town seemed so empty when we were packing the van up and everything. Like, there was nobody around. I don't think we saw more than half a dozen other people up there all weekend. Like, there was this little pancake house and we stopped in this morning for breakfast. There was no wait for a table and everyone just seemed to be moving so slow. Or was that just me being impatient to get off the road?
No, you weren't being impatient. They all seemed like they were doing everything in slow motion. But then we hit the highway and traffic was so thick that we had to take back roads and shit to get home.
Okay, yeah. And what about the guy at the gate when we left our campsite? What was it he said? We told him we were headed back to Atlanta and he goes, "You ladies make sure to follow the rules and the road. Don't stray from your path and watch out for the light." Something that made no sense at the time. But now it seems like he was giving us a legitimate warning. Coded, but coherent.
It kind of feels crazy to say, but I mean, with what just happened, I feel like that guy was warning us for our own safety. He looked kind of like Brian Doyle Murray in Groundhog Day, didn't he?
Who's that?
Bill Murray's brother.
No, I mean in Groundhog Day. Who is he?
He's the main guy who whispers to the groundhog when it comes out of the hole. Guy in the top hat.
Oh, yeah. He does kinda. So, yeah, he said some weird shit. I didn't get it. But he did say the light. Or the lights. Maybe he was just high from the night before.
Didn't seem like a stoner to me.
I guess you're right. He was more of a moonshine drinking cousin f***ing type of guy.
Stop it, you're gonna get us demonetized.
Sorry.
I mean, what are the odds this guy would have told us not to stray from our path and to avoid the light, and we wind up getting on some state highway or something and seeing all these weird lights after being at a campsite outside a mountain town that felt like some kind of liminal space? I'm just gonna come out and say it. I feel like this guy was an oracle speaking directly to us, telling us how to avoid the perils ahead of this morning. Ugh, the thought of that just like gives me goosebumps. I mean, come on, that's gotta mean something. By the way, did you see all the rats and snakes along the side of the road? I mean, that's so weird, right? Like, snakes eat rats, but they were all in the woods along the road, and I never saw any of the snakes with rats in their mouths or big old rat-sized lumps in their bodies.
The fuck?
I am not kidding.
Just rats and snakes in the woods? Like, so many of them that you noticed them?
I can't believe you didn't see them. I mean, as weird as the ride was on the back roads, that filling station was what really got me. And just for clarification for all you watching out there, everyone in that filling station was staring at us because there was not a single person of color other than Kaya within 50 miles of that place.
What do you mean other than Kaya? Bitch, you were there too. You may go by Lexi on this YouTube thing, but you're not an Alexis. You're an Alejandra. Those people don't see you as white. They look at you and they hate your spicy brown ass just as much as they hate my big old black ass.
Okay, you're right. Listen, we've been on the verge of fighting all day. I don't want to start a fight with you now. So you're right. I chose my words poorly.
So for the benefit of you folks at home, we left Gatlinburg and ended up driving on a maze of creepy back roads to avoid traffic. Our gas got low. Like, real low.
Because there weren't a lot of places to stop.
Nope, there were not. So we ended up stopping at this rundown filling station in the middle of nowhere to gas up. And it was one of those places where black folks have no business stopping at, especially black folks who've ever seen a horror movie.
And again, just to reiterate, the people there were staring at us, probably from the moment we parked to the moment we'd driven out of sight.
But you know, a bunch of white folks staring suspiciously at the black girl and the Latina, that's uncomfortable. But certainly nothing unexpected in the rural South.
But how they were staring. I mean, it was low-key menacing. And then, did you see all the shit they had on the walls and the racks?
No, because I didn't go back there. You saw me. I tried to stay as close to the door as possible, and I had my keys laced between my fingers like Wolverine claws in case I had to fight my way out of there.
At first, I saw the garden variety MAGA bullshit. Red hats, shirts, flags for their hick trucks. I swear to God, I saw a bumper sticker that said, "It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve." What is this, 1990? They also had thin blue line flags and just propaganda shit with Punisher skull logos all over it. But, Kaya, that's barely the tip of the iceberg. They had tons of crosses all over the place for sale, like a ton everywhere. Jewelry, decorations, some of the most fucked up prayers. I don't even think most of the Bible quotes on them were really out of the Bible. I mean, I wish I had taken a picture. I can't remember what any of them said, but like, it was super unsettling. Then among all these crosses, they had weapons. Like, I saw a bunch of different kinds of brass knuckles and switchblades, hatchets. Like, it felt like we walked into a horror movie or something. I kept waiting for like a drunk old man to pop out and yell, "This place has a death curse" at me. I seriously do not know how you didn't see any of that crazy shit. But I mean, that wasn't everything. On top of all the MAGA and the hate speech and the weapons, I saw the craziest shit when I went to the bathroom while you were pumping gas. But also, who only takes cash and doesn't let you pay at the pump with your card? Backwards ass place. I'm mean.
What happened in the bathroom?
Okay, so like, they had this whole section of bumper stickers, and most of them were like stupid or whatever, but there were two that were fucking weird, especially looking back. Because those weird ass blue lights out in the distance after we left there. I mean, one said, "Stay alive, avoid the blue light drive," which is just weird. What does that even mean? What the fuck? Is Blue Light Drive the name of the road?
Half of them roads didn't even have a name.
But then the other one said, "Get home alive, survive the blue light drive." And it had a blue UFO shining down blue beams of light. I mean, what? What the hell is that? And then we drive off and we just happen to see...
You're getting ahead of yourself.
There's no way that shit isn't connected.
First, tell me about the bathroom.
Past those bumper stickers was the hallway they go down for the bathroom. So I round the corner, and I swear to you, there was an entire wall covered in missing persons flyers. Some looked like they were official, and some looked like they were made by, like, I don't know, a family member or some shit, but, like, an entire hallway wall thing. It was, like, 15 feet all the way down and covered in flyers. The shitty lighting overhead was shitty, so, like, I couldn't read them all, but there were a lot of folk up there that looked familiar. Like, I didn't know them, but they definitely looked like they could have been brothers and sisters. You know, like, people of color, people in the queer community. I mean, it was really troubling to see so many people going missing from an area. Especially since it was the area we were in. There was one that was a young guy. He was, like, probably 20. And the picture they had on the flyer, he looked so self-conscious and shy with his hands stuffed in his jean pockets, eyes looking down at his feet, just like so vulnerable looking. And I mean, I just can't imagine that something horrible didn't happen to that poor kid. And there was one flyer that had these two ladies, blonde and redheaded, arms wrapped around each other. His smile so big and bright, they practically jumped off the paper. It's like their smiles were so loud I could almost hear them laughing, you know? You could like see how happy they were, and like something bad probably happened to them too. And I was just thinking, like, how you and I were like them. Kind of vulnerable, just like the two of us against the world, you know? And the one that just keeps sticking in my head was a mom and her kids. She had a teenage daughter and a 10-year-old son. They were heading to a family Thanksgiving dinner and never arrived. There seems to be a question as to whether the mom took off with the kids or something happened to them, but I mean, how terrifying. There are a lot of mixed kids on the wall, actually, not just those two. Like, lots of young people, lots of vulnerable young people. I started to get truly concerned for our safety.
Okay, so something I didn't tell you. You know, you were so freaked out. When we left that place, it was right about dark. We just kept driving. We didn't know where we were. There were, like, no other cars anywhere after being in such crazy traffic. And off in the distance, those flashing blue lights. They seemed to be coming down from the sky, not starting on the ground and going up. And we just kept driving. And it, like, seemed to never end. Like, I felt like we were going nowhere. And you said you heard these sirens. And I told you I didn't hear anything. But that wasn't true. I didn't hear any sirens, but I did hear something.
And what did you hear?
I heard voices. Like, ghostly voices. I didn't know what to make of any of it. It was terrifying.
We made it out alive, so there's that, right? But seriously, I wonder if those voices had anything to do with the blue lights? Or if they had anything to do with the crazy little nook I stumbled upon going to the bathroom.
What crazy little nook?
Okay, so down the hallway of the disappeared, there was a little bend. It was freaky because the fluorescents overhead were all flickery and glitchy. So it was like the worst, dirtiest rave I've ever been to. There was this dark, recessed corner, and I thought that was the way back to the bathroom. So I went there. Remember that movie where the baby got eaten? Like, it was too much and we had to stop?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, remember all those weird markings on the walls in the movie before you see what's cooking? Where it looks like some kind of crazy runes, but it's like dripping with blood. Okay, so this little nook in the back of the hallway, instead of missing posters on the wall, it has these crazy characters on it. They were dripping and it looked like they were painted on the wall in blood. I don't know if it was blood or just like paint or oil or some shit, but they were the same kind of symbols. I mean, they weren't the exact same ones, but that's like exactly what they looked like. Some crazy ass runes. I mean, that's creepy and spooky shit, but not the freakiest part of that crazy ass altar that I saw.
Altar? You mean like voodoo and witchcraft and Santeria shit?
I don't think these hillbillies would be into voodoo and Santeria, but like, there was this nasty cloth on the shelf in the corner. Like, nasty. Dried puddles of congealed stuff. Almost looked like fat or something on top of dried blood or something. And there were like dead flowers all over and newspaper clippings and random pieces of paper with words strewn across them, but they were so covered in all this crap that was dripped across all the papers and flowers and bones.
Bones? Excuse me? Yeah, that is some crazy witchcraft voodoo Santeria shit like I saw in that one movie. How the fuck are you just now telling me about all this?
I really don't know. I almost pissed myself right there. I never did find the bathroom. I ended up pissing in the composting toilet in the van after we left. God, I just thinking about all the bloody shit scattered in there gives me the shivers. I mean, it looked bloody. It might not have been blood. I've never seen anything like that. I don't watch that shit you watch. It creeps me out and gives me nightmares, and here it is today. We're living a nightmare. I swear, I feel like we're trapped in some crazy alternate universe, and it's not over yet. Like, those people weren't necessarily last seen at that gas station. They were just in that area, so their posters wound up there. Like, how the fuck far are we from that hellhole? Are we even safe yet?
Yeah, for everyone watching on YouTube, we drove about 2 hours when we left the filling station. We're parked for the night in what looks like a little campsite off the main highway. I'm not sure where we are, but we've been driving south, so we must have crossed the state line by now.
Are you sure? I haven't seen any signs for it.
I'm sure, babe, but we need to come back to the lights we saw. I don't think we painted an adequate picture for our viewers about what we saw. So, after we gassed up, we loaded up and got on the road pretty quick. You tried to call Nana to check on the dog, but of course, we were so far out in the sticks that you couldn't get signal. Now, something you may not know about me is that I drive like a little old lady.
That's true. You really do.
It drives her batshit. But as a black woman, I don't want to give a cop any possible reason to pull me over. I drive under the speed limit, and I keep all of my shit in working order. No brake lights out, no loud mufflers, no loose bumpers, no low tires, no headlamps out, turn signals, inspection stickers, oil changes, tags, and title. You name it. I keep all that shit locked down. So when we left that filling station, I was driving as fast as I possibly could without breaking the speed limit. And any van lifer will tell you that these vans do go very fast anyway. And then we see the lights. Blue lights on both sides on the road, spaced about 3 or 4 car lengths. Now, I've been on the road before after there have been protests and riots, and this looked, to me, exactly like a big show of police force. Maybe a speed trap or a safety checkpoint or something. Maybe just a bunch of county mounties looking to arrest somebody for a DWB.
What's a DWB?
Driving while black. So when I saw the lights, I felt this wave of panic hit me. I don't think you noticed, but I clenched up. I was sure that one of those rednecks back there had called the law on us for some made-up bullshit, and now here they were just waiting for us. That stretch of road was very flat, so we could see the lights from quite a distance. Enough distance that I thought about turning off onto another road, but there weren't any other roads to pull off on. As we got closer, it appeared that the blue lights are on the side of the road, but among the trees. Maybe the cop cars were parked in the woods, hiding, to catch speeding drivers or something. But if that was the case, why did they all have their lights on? But when we got up on top of them...
That's when we noticed that the lights weren't coming from an object on the ground. They were sort of trickling down from above and sort of collecting on the ground. It's hard to describe.
And as we passed by the lights, that's when you heard sirens that weren't there, and when I heard voices that weren't there.
What did the voices sound like?
Kids. Mostly. Kids. But creepier. They were all talking, saying different things, but I couldn't understand what.
Like, what the fuck is going on? How the hell can we live like this? Nothing feels right. Nothing seems right. No one seems right. For all we know, one of those crazy hicks in that place was some kind of killer who preys on people who stop there. Maybe he takes down the license plates of his victims. Maybe he follows them and nabs them when they least expect it. What if those bones on that damn altar were from his victims? What if he was that greasy asshole who was eyeing us while he wiped his grimy hands on a dirty fucking rag? What if he took down our license plate? You had better know how to survive a horror movie. Christ knows you've watched enough of them. What the fuck was that?
Calm down. It's just the old laptop we were using to edit the Gatlinburg footage. It decided to boot up on its own. I must have kicked it or something.
You were nowhere near it. This isn't right. I know it.
Hun, take several breaths. Calm down. Obviously, it's just... That's... weird.
What's weird? What came up on the screen? Is that the Microsoft blue screen of death?
The screen turned blue and this weird message popped up.
What's it say?
It says, "Leave none alive on the blue light drive."
Stay away from us. Stay away from us.
You, babe, no matter what happens, we're stronger than them.
When they didn't return home as expected, Kaya Swinson's grandmother reported Kaya and her partner, Alejandra Corzo, missing. After a brief search, Ms. Corzo's white Dodge Ram conversion van was found overturned in a ditch on a little-traveled back road only minutes away from the Sevier County, Tennessee campsite where the two were last seen. No bodies were recovered in the wreckage, nor were any signs of foul play evident. None of the couple's belongings, which included thousands of dollars worth of digital audio and videography equipment, appeared to have been stolen. The whereabouts of Ms. Swinson and Ms. Corzo are currently unknown. Kaya Swinson is a 33-year-old African-American female. She is 5 foot 6 inches tall and weighs about 170 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. Alejandra Corzo is a 28-year-old Latinx female. She is 5 foot 4 inches tall and weighs about 127 pounds. Her hair is dyed platinum blonde. The last camping, Bohannon Campground, White Dodge. Somewhere the sun shines, somewhere the birds sing the glory of a new dawn, somewhere it's spring again. But here it's always Halloween. It's the Rogue Transmissions halfway to Halloween hullabaloo. Rogue Transmissions, an unhinged anthology of indie podcasts, is invading your streaming device to throw a hell-raising halfway to Halloween party. Featuring all of your indie podcasting favorites, including Brew Crime, Chick Lit, Octoberpod, our true crime podcast, Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique, Spine Chillers and Serial Killers, Serial Napper, Twisted and Uncorked, and Witches Talking Tarot. It's coming Tuesday, April 29th to this podcast. That's right, the Rogue Transmissions halfway to Halloween hullabaloo is coming to the podcast you're listening to right now on Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Rogue Transmissions. Rogue Transmissions. Rogue Transmissions. Halfway to Halloween hullabaloo. List of participating podcasts may vary. Intended for external use only. Enjoy Rogue Transmissions responsibly. Void where prohibited. It's intermission time, folks. I'm your host, Mr. Edward October. There's a grand tradition of weird detective stories in which the seemingly supernatural events are all explained away as the machinations of unscrupulous human villains blur the lines between mysteries, whodunits, dark house thrillers, gothic romance, and straight-up horror. The first example that likely springs to your mind might be Scooby-Doo, but stories such as these can be traced back to the lost silent film London After Midnight, in which a detective proves that the vampire of the story is not what it seems. And even farther than that, depose murders in the Rue Morgue, and to the detective fiction of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes. Thanks to supernatural-themed Holmes adventures, like The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Creeping Man, and The Devil's Foot, Sherlock Holmes mysteries and the horror genre are practically kissing cousins. Indeed, the link between Holmes and horror is perhaps most prominent on old-time radio. Since there weren't enough of Doyle's stories to fill multiple seasons of weekly radio series, many Sherlock Holmes radio plays are almost wholly original works, with only the flimsiest inspiration coming from one of Doyle's stories. A lot of these pastiche Holmes adventures veer far afield into horror territory. A great many actors have portrayed the master detective on radio, and between the acts of Octoberpod, I thought I'd rank my top 5 old-time radio Holmes performances. Now, this list is in no way exhaustive or all-inclusive. There are dozens of Holmes radio series and this ranking is simply based on the actors from the series I'm most familiar with. Additionally, I consulted the Arthur Conan Doyle Encyclopedia for some help with dates and production history details. All right, the game's afoot. Number 5, Orson Welles.
You've been getting yourself very wet lately, that you're an extremely careless servant girl, and you've moved your dressing table to the other side of the room.
Holmes, if you had lived a few centuries ago, they'd have burned you alive. Tell me now, how did you know all that?
It's too simple to talk about. Scratches and clumsy cuts, my dear fellow, on the inner side of your shoe there, just where the firelight strikes it. Scratches, cuts. Somebody scraped away crusted mud and did it badly. Scraped the shoe along with it. There's your wet foot, my dear Watson, and your careless servant girl all on one shoe. Face badly shaved on the right side, always used to be on the left. Light must come from the other side. Couldn't very well move your window, must move the dressing table.
Of course.
After devoting half of a recent Octoberpod, Reputation for the Uncanny, to Orson Welles, you'd think I'd be sick of talking about him. Before he ever frightened children with Nostradamus's predictions of World War III, and before he sipped a single drop of Paul Masson French champagne, Welles was thrilling audiences on Mercury Theatre on the air. Welles famously portrayed Holmes in a radio adaptation of the William Gillette Sherlock Holmes stage play. While Welles always delivers a solid performance, I think he's somewhat miscast here. I've always felt that Welles's portrayal of the Shadow is a bit too aloof and a bit too English, and sounds a little constipated. His Sherlock Holmes performance is similar, though his Holmes is not quite aloof enough, and also not quite English enough. And still sounds kind of constipated. Welles would later play Professor Moriarty, more successfully than Holmes, against the next actor on my list. Number 4, Sir John Gielgud.
You're very certain, aren't you, Professor Moriarty, that it is I who am going to die?
There is no other course, unless you listen to reason. The situation between us, Mr. Holmes, is becoming an impossible one. It simply cannot go on.
It won't, I assure you.
I tell you solemnly, Sherlock Holmes, that if you are clever enough to bring destruction on me, you may rest assured that I shall do as much to you.
You have paid me several compliments during this interview, Professor. Let me pay you one in return when I say that if I were assured of the former eventuality, I would most cheerfully accept the latter.
I can promise you the one, but not the other. Good day, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, your pistol, Professor. You may need it before Monday.
Thank you.
Good day, Professor.
I think goodbye is the word, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
The clip you just heard is from The Final Problem, my favorite episode of this particular series. Where Welles's portrayal of Holmes was flawed, his Moriarty is spot on. Ruthless, cold, dispassionate, but tempered with quiet menace and charm. John Gielgud as Holmes is no slouch either. As one of the greatest actors of his generation, his performance as the great detective is technically flawless, but it has no bite. Listening to Gielgud's Holmes sounds more like a master thespian portraying Holmes on stage, rather than like Holmes himself. This BBC radio series, which ran from 1954 to 1955, is often celebrated as the best Holmes radio series, but it's always left me kind of cold. It's too stately and mannered for my taste, a little too faithful to the source material, and it sounds more like an audio book than like an audio drama. It feels like, well, like a school assignment. But before I go on, please indulge me with another Welles-Gielgud connection and yet another Paul Masson wine anecdote. You see, in the 1980s, John Gielgud received some small amount of buzz for playing the snooty butler from the Arthur movies, starring Dudley Moore. When Paul Masson Wines finally fired the difficult-to-work-with Orson Welles, as we discussed earlier in our episode Reputation for the Uncanny, he was replaced, for a time, with, you guessed it, Sir John Gielgud, playing a snooty butler.
What's this fabulous wine?
Paul Masson Chenin Blanc. It's crisp and fruity.
Yummy!
Indeed. Instead of following the latest fashions, Paul Masson follows the oldest traditions of winemaking, and it shows. Paul Masson will sell no wine before it's time.
Number 3. Ben Wright.
You simply must eat, Holmes.
My appetite will return when I have a solution for this case, Watson, and not before.
Well, I've hesitated to say it, Holmes, but if that man had died by any natural means in front of our very eyes, I'm perfectly certain that you would have solved the riddle.
Well, if your hypothesis is correct, Watson, this case is not a matter of the mortal's minds. And that I refuse to admit.
Well, we saw him come in. We saw him open his briefcase. He turned up the lamp, sat down.
Thank you, Watson.
Thank me for what?
You've just given me some remarkably interesting food for thought.
Oh, really?
Come, Watson. Your hat and stick. We have work to do.
Cranwood's house, you mean?
Well, I shall go there this afternoon. But meanwhile, I want you to take a note to Lestrade at Scotland Yard and personally see to it that he gets it.
And then?
Meet me at 9 o'clock tonight at the British Museum.
Ben Wright is a bit of a wild card pick. He starred in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes for 39 episodes from 1949 to 1950. Sadly, only a single episode of this series is known, by me anyway, to have survived. It's called The Duke of Holywell, and it isn't very good. It's a piece of comedic dreck. But Ben Wright, a voice you'd no doubt recognize from countless Disney cartoons, nevertheless manages to shine as Holmes. The best example of Wright's work in the role can be found not in his own series, but in an episode of another actor's series. When that actor fell ill, Ben Wright was cast to fill in for him in The Singular Affair of the Ancient Egyptian Curse. His take on the character is more pragmatic and compassionate than most, and he's become a favorite of mine. It's a shame we can't hear more of his interpretation of the world's first consulting detective. Number 2, Tom Conway.
Professor Moriarty? Quite. You may have noticed, Watson, that London has been singularly free from crime during the last few months. And for a very good reason. Professor Moriarty was not in residence.
Oh, you mean that you think we've succeeded in driving him out?
No, Watson. He is not in London because he has business elsewhere. But where? I confess I was in complete ignorance until the day before yesterday morning, when I received a telegram informing me that one of Moriarty's chief assistants had been seen prowling through the graves at Greyfriars. Then I remembered that Professor Moriarty has a particular reason for hating Edinburgh. He's not a man to forget his grudges, Watson. The question is, shall we be in time to prevent his revenge? But here, get into this cab before you catch him.
Tom Conway is the actor for whom Ben Wright was pinch hitting. Horror fans will know Conway from his appearances in the films of Val Lewton. He was a Russian-born actor who trained himself to sound like a British aristocrat. Conway replaced Vincent Price as the Saint on radio, a role which Conway's own brother, George Sanders, portrayed on film. And he also replaced another radio actor on our list as Sherlock Holmes. Conway's Holmes is solid, cold, calculating, aloof, and also quite aggressive, never shying away from getting his hands a bit dirty. My only complaint is that he plays Holmes as almost too posh. He comes off as a caricature of a British gentleman. If this was a ranking of Holmes radio series and not Holmes radio performances, Conway's shows would be at the top. You see, in order to compensate for the loss of their previous star, the production values of the show improved. The organ musical score, notably, was replaced with an orchestral score. And some of the scripts are quite wild, pitting Holmes against voodoo curses, Adventure of the Black Cockerel, the devil himself, spreading bubonic plague in a haunted Scottish castle, The Adventure of the Haunted Bagpipes, and even an island of circus freaks. But contemporary audiences didn't like Conway very much. He only played the character for a single season of 38 episodes, but he was replacing the number 1 slot on my and many other Holmes rankings, so he had big shoes to fill. Number 1, Basil Rathbone.
Now you've come home with your towel awry, your suit torn, and as ravenous as a wolf.
Yes, I've had a bit of exercise, my dear Watson. Pass me the tongue, will you? It would have done you good to go along.
Yes, what were you doing?
Investigating the premises inhabited by foreign spies known to have been in London on last Monday. Took a bit of doing, too. Climbing walls, breaking into cellars, prowling around rooftops.
Well?
I've invited the gentleman who sold the papers to meet us.
How? I don't understand.
I inserted this advertisement in today's Daily Telegraph. Tonight, same hour, same place, 2 taps, vitally important. Your own safety at stake. Signed, Piero, as usual.
By George, if he answers that, we've got him.
Unless we're too late. Come along, Watson. There's no time to lose. You can take this package for a change. I've been carrying it around all day.
What's in it?
Oh, just a jemmy, a dark lantern, a chisel, and a revolver.
Nice equipment for a respectable citizen to be carrying about the streets of London, I must say.
Yeah, you know, Watson, there are times when I suspect we aren't quite respectable.
I realize this may be a basic pick, but what other choice is there? Basil Rathbone gave life to Doyle's immortal detective in 14 feature films and on radio for 6 seasons from 1939 to 1946, a whopping 217 episodes. Rathbone's face and voice are as emblematic of the character as Bela Lugosi is to Dracula, and Peter Cushing is to Professor Van Helsing. If you close your eyes and think of Sherlock Holmes, the face you see is Rathbone's. If you read a Holmes story, the voice of Holmes you'll hear is very likely Rathbone's. In short, Basil Rathbone is Sherlock Holmes, playing the character with the right amount of intellect and insanity, aloofness and cunning, cold detachment, and warm charm. My favorite of Rathbone's radio broadcasts is The Bruce Partington Plans. And there you have it. I hope I've inspired you to seek out some of these old shows. They're all pretty easy to find. You can get a lot of them on YouTube. Oh, but it looks like last call at the snack bar, as intermission draws to a close. Let's turn our backs on 221B Baker Street, because Act 2 of Octoberpod starts right now. My dear S., it may pain you to know that the incredulity with which you met my story has prevented me from ever opening my mouth upon the subject again. I leave you the attached record after my death, and perhaps strangers may be found to have more confidence in me than did my own friend. Signed, Dr. James Hardcastle, February 4th, 1908. The Terror of Blue John Gap by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Narrated by Edward October. April 17. Already I feel the benefit of this wonderful upland air. The Allerton farm lies 1,420 feet above sea level, so it may well be a bracing climate. Beyond the usual morning cough, I have very little discomfort. I think my doctors will be pleased. The Allerton family has seen to it that I'm well fed and comfortable. It is a most lonely spot, and the walks are picturesque in the extreme. The farm consists of grazing land lying at the bottom of an irregular valley. On each side are the fantastic limestone hills, formed of rock so soft that you can break it away in your hands. All this country is hollow. Could you strike it with some gigantic hammer, it would boom like a drum, or possibly cave in altogether and expose some huge subterranean sea. A great sea there must surely be, for on all sides the streams run into the mountain itself, never to reappear. There are gaps everywhere amid the rocks, and when you pass through them, you find yourself in great caverns which wind down into the bowels of the earth. I have a small bicycle lamp, and it is a perpetual joy to me to carry it into these weird solitudes, and to see the wonderful silver and black effect when I throw its light upon the stalactites which drape the lofty roofs. Shut off the lamp, and you are in the blackest darkness. Turn it on, and it is a scene from the Arabian Nights. But there is one of these openings in the earth which has a special interest, for it is the handiwork of man. I had never heard of Blue John when I came to these parts. Blue John, as you may know, is the name given to a peculiar mineral of a beautiful purple shade, which is only found at 1 or 2 places in the world. It is so rare that an ordinary vase of Blue John could be valued at a great price. The ancient Romans discovered that it was to be found in this valley and sank a horizontal shaft deep into the mountainside. The opening of their mine has been called Blue John Gap, a clean-cut arch in the rock, the mouth all overgrown with bushes. It is a goodly passage which the Roman miners have cut, and it intersects some of the great water-worn caves, so that if you enter Blue John Gap, you would do well to mark your steps and to have a good store of candles, or you may never make your way back to daylight again. I have not yet gone deeply into it, but this very day I stood at the mouth of the arched tunnel, and peering down into the black recesses beyond, I vowed that when my health returned, I would devote some holiday to exploring those mysterious depths and finding out for myself how far the Roman had penetrated into the hills. Strange how superstitious these countrymen are. I should have thought better of young Armitage, for he's a man of some education and character, and a fine fellow for his station in life. I was standing at the Blue John Gap when he came across the field to me. He jerked his thumb towards the black vault and jabbered on about the terror that lives in the Blue John Cave. How absurdly easy it is for a legend to arise in a lonely countryside. It seems that from time to time sheep have been missing from the fields, carried bodily away, according to Armitage. That they could have wandered away of their own accord and disappeared among the mountains was an explanation to which he would not listen. On one occasion, a pool of blood had been found, and some tufts of wool. That also, I pointed out, could be explained in a perfectly natural way. Further, the nights upon which sheep disappeared were invariably very dark, cloudy nights with no moon. This I met with the obvious retort that those were the nights which a commonplace sheep stealer would naturally choose for his work. On one occasion, a gap had been made in a wall, and some of the stones scattered for a considerable distance. Human agency again, in my opinion. Finally, Armitage clinched all his arguments by telling me that he had actually heard the creature. Indeed, that anyone could hear it who remained long enough at the gap. It was a distant roaring of immense volume. I could not but smile at this, knowing, as I do, the strange reverberations which come out of an underground water system running amid the chasms of a limestone formation. And now comes the queer point about the whole business. I was still standing near the mouth of the cave, turning over in my mind the various statements of Armitage, and reflecting how readily they could be explained away, when suddenly, from the depth of the tunnel beside me, there issued a most extraordinary sound. First of all, it seemed to be a great distance away, far down in the bowels of the earth. Secondly, in spite of this suggestion of distance, it was very loud. Lastly, it was not a boom nor a crash, such as one would associate with falling water or tumbling rock, but it was a high whine, tremulous and vibrating, almost like the whinnying of a horse. It was certainly a most remarkable experience, and one which for a moment gave a new significance to Armitage's words. April 20. In the last 3 days, I've made several expeditions to the Blue John Gap, and have even penetrated some short distance, but my bicycle lantern is so small and weak that I dare not trust myself very far. I shall do the thing more systematically. I have heard no sound at all, and could almost believe that I had been the victim of some hallucination, suggested perhaps by all the legends. Of course, the whole idea is absurd, and yet I must confess that those bushes at the entrance of the cave do appear as though some heavy creature had forced its way through them. I have bought some more candles and mean to investigate for myself. I observed this morning that among the numerous tufts of sheep's wool which lay among the bushes near the cavern, there was one which was smeared with blood. Of course, my reason tells me that if sheep wander into such rocky places, they are likely to injure themselves. And yet somehow that splash of crimson gave me a sudden shock, and for a moment I found myself shrinking back in horror from the old Roman arch. A fetid breath seemed to ooze from the black depths into which I peered. Could it indeed be possible that some nameless thing, some dreadful presence, was lurking down yonder? Well, tomorrow I will delve more deeply into this matter. April 22. Yesterday afternoon I made my way to the Blue John Gap. My misgivings returned as I gazed into its depths, and I wished that I had brought a companion to share my exploration. Finally, having gathered up my resolve, I lit my candle, pushed my way through the briars, and descended into the rocky shaft. It went down at an acute angle for some 50 feet, the floor being covered with broken stone. Thence there extended a long, straight passage cut in the solid rock. The lining of this corridor was certainly of some harder material than limestone, for I could see the tool marks which the old miners had left in their excavation, as fresh as if they had been done yesterday. Down this strange old-world corridor I stumbled, my feeble flame throwing a dim circle of light around me, which made the shadows beyond all the more threatening and obscure. Finally, I came to a spot where the Roman tunnel opened into a water-worn cavern, a huge hall hung with long white icicles of lime deposit. From this central chamber I could dimly perceive that a number of passages worn by the subterranean streams wound away into the depths of the earth. I was standing there wondering whether I should turn back or whether I dare venture farther into this dangerous labyrinth. Then I saw something at my feet which seized my attention. A drip from the distant roof had left a patch of soft mud. In the very center of this there was a huge mark, an ill-defined blotch, deep, broad, and irregular, as if a great boulder had fallen upon it. No loose stone lay near, however, nor was there anything to account for the impression. It was far too large to be caused by any possible animal, and besides, there was only the one, and the patch of mud was of such a size that no reasonable stride could have covered it. As I rose from the examination of that singular mark, and then looked round into the black shadows, my heart sank, and the candle trembled in my outstretched hand. I soon recovered my nerve, and reflected how absurd it was to associate so huge and shapeless a mark with the track of any known animal. Even an elephant could not have produced it. Before proceeding, I took good note of a curious rock formation in the wall by which I could recognize the entrance of the Roman tunnel. The precaution was very necessary, for the great cave, so far as I could see it, was intersected by passages. Having made sure of my position and reassured myself by examining my spare candles and my matches, I advanced slowly over the rocky surface of the cavern. And now I come to the point where I met with such sudden and desperate disaster. A stream, some 20 feet broad, ran across my path, and I walked for some little distance along the bank to find a spot where I could cross dry-shod. Finally, I came to a place where a single flat boulder lay near the center, which I could reach in a stride. As it chanced, however, the rock had been cut away and made top-heavy by the rush of the stream, so that it tilted over as I landed on it and shot me into the ice-cold water. My candle went out, and I found myself floundering about in utter and absolute darkness. I staggered to my feet again. The candle had fallen from my hand and was lost in the stream, but I had 2 others in my pocket, so that was of no importance. I got one of them ready and drew out my box of matches to light it. Only then did I realize my position. The box had been soaked in my fall into the river, making the matches impossible to strike. A cold hand seemed to close round my heart as I realized my predicament. The darkness was opaque and horrible. I stood still, and by an effort I steadied myself. I tried to reconstruct in my mind a map of the floor of the cavern as I had last seen it. Alas, the details I'd memorized to regain my bearings were high on the wall, and not to be found in the pitch darkness by touch alone. Still, I remembered in a general way how the sides were situated. Yet in that black velvety darkness one lost all one's bearings in an instant. The rippling of the stream, which was the one sound audible, showed me where it lay, but the moment that I left its bank, I was utterly lost. Finding my way back in absolute darkness through that limestone labyrinth was clearly an impossible task. I sat down upon a boulder and reflected upon my unfortunate plight. I had told no one of my plans to explore that mine, and it was unlikely that a search party would come after me. There was only one hope, and that was that the matches might dry. When I fell into the river, only half of me had got thoroughly wet. My left shoulder had remained above the water. I took the box of matches and put it into my left armpit. The heat of my body might dry them, but not for many hours. Meanwhile, there was nothing for it but to wait. I eventually sank into an uneasy slumber. I slept for maybe an hour, possibly more. By God, what a tread it was! The darkness was as complete as ever, but the tread was regular and decisive, and it was coming beyond all question in my direction. My skin grew cold, and my hair stood on end as I listened to that steady and ponderous footfall. There was some creature there which could see in the dark. I crouched low on my rock and tried to blend myself into it. The steps grew nearer still, then stopped. And presently, I was aware of a loud lapping and gurgling. The creature was drinking at the stream. And then again there was silence, broken by a succession of long sniffs and snorts of tremendous volume and energy. Had it caught the scent of me? Then I heard the steps again. They were on my side of the stream now. The stones rattled within a few yards of where I lay. Hardly daring to breathe, I crouched upon my rock. Then the steps drew away. I heard the splash as it returned across the river, and the sound died away into the distance in the direction from which it had come. There was indeed some inconceivable monster, something utterly unearthly and dreadful, which lurked in the hollow of the mountain. The combat between my reason, which told me that such things could not be, and my senses, which told me that they were, raged within me as I lay. I had taken my matches from my armpit and felt them. Now they seemed perfectly hard and dry. To my delight, the first match I tried took fire at once. I lit the candle, and with a terrified backward glance into the depths of the cavern, I hurried towards the Roman passage. As I did so, I passed the patch of mud on which I had seen the huge imprint. Now there were 3 similar imprints upon its surface, enormous in size, irregular in outline, of a depth which indicated the ponderous weight which had left them. April 25. I was laid up in bed for 2 days after my incredible adventure in the cavern. In that time, I sought out the advice of one who might help make sense of the horrible things I encountered. There is a Dr. Mark Johnson who practices some few miles away, to whom I had a note of recommendation from Professor Saunderson. I met with him when I was strong enough to get about, and I recounted to him my whole strange experience. He listened intently, and then carefully examined me, paying special attention to my reflexes and to the pupils of my eyes. When he had finished, he refused to discuss my adventure, saying that it was entirely beyond him. But he gave me the card of a Mr. Picton at Castleton, with the advice that I should instantly go to him and recount to him my story. I therefore ventured to the little town 10 miles away to meet with Mr. Picton, who I assumed to be a man of some importance. I was about to ring the bell when some misgiving came into my mind, and, crossing to a neighboring shop, I asked the man behind the counter if he could tell me anything of Mr. Picton.
"Why," said he, "he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire, and yonder's his loony bin."
Embarrassed as I am at having fallen victim to Dr. Johnson's cruel trick, I must admit that I've been no more sympathetic to Armitage than Dr. Johnson has been to me. When I was a student, I had the reputation of being a man of courage and enterprise. Certainly, my heart quails whenever I think of that horrible cavern in the hill and its monstrous occupant. What shall I do? If I say nothing, then the mystery remains unsolved. If I do say anything, then I may spark mad alarm over the whole countryside, or, alternatively, may find myself consigned to an asylum. On the whole, I think it my best course to prepare for some expedition, which shall be more deliberate and better thought out than the last. As a first step, I have been to Castleton and obtained a few essentials. A large acetylene lantern for one thing, and a good double-barreled sporting rifle for another. The latter I have hired, but I have bought enough heavy game cartridges to bring down a rhinoceros. Now I'm ready for my troglodyte friend. But who and what is he? There's the question which stands between me and my sleep. I think of the old world legends of dragons and other monsters. Were they, perhaps, not such fairy tales as we might have thought? May 3. We have had cloudy and moonless nights of late, which according to my information were the seasons upon which sheep disappeared. Well, sheep have disappeared, 4 in all during the last 3 nights. No trace of them at all. And the countryside is buzzing with rumors of poachers. More alarming, young Armitage has disappeared also. He left his moorland cottage early on Wednesday night and has never been heard of since. Rumor has it that he owes money and has found a situation in some other part of the country, whence he will presently write for his belongings. But I have grave misgivings. Is it not much more likely that the recent tragedy of the sheep has caused him to go hunting for the creature, only to be carried off by it into the recesses of the mountains? What an inconceivable fate for a civilized 20th century Englishman. How far am I answerable both for his death and for any other mishap which may occur? Owning myself therefore partially culpable, this morning I went down to the local police station and told my story. The inspector entered it all in a large book and bowed me out with commendable gravity. But I heard a burst of laughter before I'd got down the garden path. No doubt he was recounting my adventure to his mates. June 10. The night of Friday, May 3rd was dark and cloudy, the very night for the monster to walk. At about 11 o'clock I went for the farmhouse with my lantern and my rifle, leaving behind a note in which I said that, if I were missing, search for me in the direction of the gap. I made my way to the mouth of the Roman shaft, and, having perched myself along the rocks close to the opening, I shut off my lantern and waited patiently with the loaded rifle ready to my hand. It was a melancholy vigil. All down the winding valley I could see the scattered lights of the farmhouses and could hear the church clock tolling the hours. Midnight struck in the distant church, then 1, then 2. It was the darkest hour of the night. The clouds were drifting low, and there was not a star in the sky. And then suddenly I heard it. From far away down the tunnel came those muffled steps, so soft and yet so ponderous. I heard also the rattle of stones as they gave way under that giant tread. They drew nearer. They were close upon me. I heard the crashing of the bushes round the entrance, and then dimly through the darkness I was conscious of the loom of some enormous shape, some monstrous creature passing swiftly and very silently out of the tunnel. I was paralyzed with fear and amazement. I lay motionless and breathless, whilst the great dark mass whisked by me and was swallowed up in the night. Not a second time should my nerve fail me. Not a second time should that creature pass unchallenged. I swore it between my clenched teeth as I laid my cocked rifle across the rock. And yet it nearly happened. There was no warning of approach now as the creature passed over the grass. Suddenly, like a dark, drifting shadow, the huge bulk loomed up once more before me, making for the entrance of the cave. Again came the paralysis of nerve, which held my crooked forefinger impotent upon the trigger. But with a desperate effort I shook it off, even as the brushwood rustled, and the monstrous beast blended with the shadow of the gap. I fired at the retreating form. In the blaze of the gun, I caught a glimpse of a great shaggy mass, something with rough and bristling hair of a withered gray color, fading away to white in its lower parts. The huge body supported upon short, thick, curving legs. I had just that glance, and then I heard a rattle of the stones as the creature tore down into its burrow. In an instant, I sprang down from my rock and rushed after the monster down the old Roman shaft. My lamp cast a brilliant flood of vivid light in front of me, and as I ran, I saw the great beast lurching along before me. Its hair looked like coarse, faded oakum, and hung down in long, dense masses which swayed as it moved. It was like an enormous, unclipped sheep in its fleece, far larger in size than the largest elephant. Rifle in hand, I ran at top speed upon the trail of the monster. The creature was swift, but now I was to find out to my cost that it was also very cunning. I had imagined that it was in panic flight and that I had only to pursue it. The idea that it might turn upon me never entered my excited brain. I rushed into the great central cave, fearful lest I should lose all trace of the beast. But he had turned upon his own traces, and in a moment we were face to face. He had reared up on his hind legs as a bear would do, and stood above me, enormous, menacing, such a creature as no nightmare had ever brought into my imagination. There was something bear-like in his whole pose and attitude, and his great crooked forelegs with their ivory white claws, in his rugged skin, and in his red gaping mouth fringed with row upon row of monstrous needle-sharp fangs. Only in one point did he differ from the bear, or from any creature which walks the earth. Its eyes, which glistened in the glow of my lantern, were huge, white, and sightless. For a moment his great paws swung over my head. The next he fell forward upon me. I and my broken lantern crashed to the earth. Came to myself, I was back in the farmhouse of the Allertons. 2 days had passed. I had lain all night in the cave, insensible from concussion of the brain, with my left arm and 2 ribs badly fractured. In the morning, my note had been found. A search party of 12 farmers assembled, and I had been tracked down and carried back to my bedroom. There was, it seems, no sign of the creature, and no blood stain which would show that my bullet had found him as he passed. Save for my own plight and the marks upon the mud, there was nothing to prove that what I said was true. 6 weeks have now elapsed, and I am able to sit out once more in the sunshine. Just opposite me is the steep hillside, gray with shaly rock, and yonder on its flank is the dark cleft which marks the opening of the Blue John Gap. But it is no longer a source of terror. Never again through that ill-omened tunnel shall any strange shape flit out into the world of men. The educated and the scientific, the Dr. Johnsons and the like, may smile at my narrative, but the poorer folk of the countryside had never a doubt as to its truth. Stick around after the credits for a brief word from some of our fellow indie podcasters, creators, and friends. There may even be some bloopers, outtakes, and bonus content as well. You have been listening to Octoberpod. Octoberpod is produced, edited, and directed by Edward October. The series co-producers are M.J. McAdams and Amber Jourdan. Logo and banner graphics by Jessica Good. Edward October character design by Nick Calavera. Select still photography courtesy of unsplash.com. Select music cues by Dr. Dreamchip and various other stock music and sound effects courtesy of freesound.org. Music from Bigfoot Apocalypse and Thorax, theme from Octoberpod, composed by Nico Vitezi. All other images, music, and FX cues, except where noted, are sourced from within the public domain. Follow us on YouTube at Octoberpod Home Video, on Instagram, and the app I still call Twitter at Octoberpod VHS, and on TikTok and Blue Sky at Octoberpod. Or find us and all of our links on the World Wide Web at octoberpodvhs.com. For business inquiries or story submissions, email octoberpod@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this program, we'd be very pleased if you told your friends about us. And while you're at it, write us a 5-star or equivalent review wherever you're listening. The man who spoke to you was Mr. Edward October.
During each season of Insinuation Podcast, your hosts will take one crime and break it down from the very beginning. We provide you with enough information to allude that something was wrong long before the outcome of each case. We dive deeper into the root of the problem, which many times turns out to be the criminal justice system that we depend on every day to save lives.
We are here to raise awareness of the inequalities in our criminal justice system, which commonly comes from insinuations throughout each case.
We call for social change for the wrongly accused, where insinuations of guilt change the lives of innocent people forever.
We call to action the protection of children and families, where eyewitness accounts insinuate that something is happening in our own neighborhoods. but we can't get past the gray areas or the red tape.
Join me, Deborah Norman.
And me, Marianne McCullough.
As we bring you a different case each season that inspires you to make a change. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Insinuation Podcast, and let's get started.
Listen up, true crime fans. I have a podcast that you won't want to miss. A heartfelt show that focuses on lesser-known crimes from around the globe called Our True Crime Podcast.
All right, buckle up, I guess. We gotta put our seatbelts on. We gotta go.
Every week, hosts Jen and Cam will guide you through a new case backed up by meticulous research and delivered with the utmost respect for victims and survivors. Cases like the fatal exorcism of Joan Vollmer.
Yes, eyes can turn red and appear to glow from increased adrenaline and blood flow.
I did not know that.
And the Haynes family massacre.
I'm almost afraid to hear it.
As a parent, I don't even know. I don't know.
You'll not only learn about the cases, you'll feel like you're part of a conversation with witty, lifelong friends. That's what truly makes this our True Crime Podcast. So, whether you're a true crime aficionado,
I thought you might say that. I was hoping anyway.
Or a casual listener,
that's a baseball team, Jen, if you didn't know.
Oh, I figured it was some kind of sports ball thing.
Sit down and join us for our True Crime Podcast. Listen on your favorite podcast apps today.
It's a Sunday. I'm sitting in a dark, dark room talking to my best buddy about
crime.
That's right.
Madison is on the air.
Do you love old-time radio?
Yes!
You know absolutely nothing about old-time radio.
Also yes.
Then Madison on the Air is for you. Follow Madison, a modern-day makeup influencer, as she zaps back into the golden age of radio. Every episode is standalone with a wide variety of genres to choose from, like detective noir.
You put the dick in private dick.
Superheroes.
So I am in the body of the Green Hornet.
Westerns.
Saloon fight. Now this is a Western.
Sci-fi.
Dude, the Martian's got a freaking heat ray.
Plus classic characters.
Toto. Oh, I gotta get that dog into an obedience class. Really digging Dracula's OG goth style. What if I killed freaking Sherlock Holmes?
And many more. Actual old-time radio scripts adapted.
It's like if the MST3K riff tracks guys were in the movies they riff.
Start at the beginning or jump around to any title that grabs you. New episodes premiere the first of every month.
Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Right now. Right now. Right now. I'm gonna get through this one. Why, said he, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. Why, said he, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire, and yonder's his asylum. I made my way to the mouth of the Roman shaft and... Unintentionally funny, the mouth of the Roman shaft. Oh, I'm such a child. Okay. The mouth of the Roman shaft. Roman shaft. I made my way to the mouth of the What am I, 12? Okay. Why, said he, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire, and yonder's his asylum. Why, he's the best mad doctor in... Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire, and yonder's his asylum. In the last 3 days, I've made several Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derby. I'm trying to do this fucking accent. Why? Why? He's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire, and yonder's his asylum. The rippling of this motherfucker. Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire, and yonder's his asylum. Alright, back to it. Mute you, you motherfucker. Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. And yonder's his asylum. And yonder's his asylum. And yonder's the loony bin. Down the old Roman shaft. And yonder's his loony bin. There we go. Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. And yonder's his loony bin. I'll fucking make something out of it. Why, said he, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. And yonder's his asylum. You motherfucker. Mute your fucking ass. And yonder is his asylum. Why, he's the best mad doctor in Derbyshire. And yonder's his asylum. Fucking take your fucking pick. Fuck me. Fiend. Motherfucker.